I am so excited I can barely contain myself. Today is the day that my new book, Meat, goes on sale. This book, that book, I've been so incredibly gratified by the kind words of early readers, from Publishers Weekly putting Meat on its list of the 10 best new releases in science, writing that this packed account makes food science feel like an urgent and essential undertaking. To some of the most influential people on the planet across conservation and climate, hunger alleviation, global health, science, and national security, saying incredibly kind things about the book. The father of synthetic biology, Harvard Medical School professor George Church, he said, "I have fascinating observations in every chapter." Nutrition and global health expert Dr. Michael Greger, he called it the best global health policy book of the decade. My hero, Jane Goodall, she said, "Please read this book. It gives us hope for a kinder future." Uh, so what's the book about? It's about using science to remake meat. Plant-based meat that is indistinguishable from animal meat. Literally indistinguishable, cannot tell the difference. And then cultivated meat that is actually the exact same thing, just produced differently. So just like you can take a seed or a cutting from a plant and grow a whole plant, you can take a sesame seed sized amount of animal fat or animal muscle and grow basically unlimited animal fat and animal muscle. In both cases, you end up with a product that is healthier, more nutritious, better for the environment, better for the global poor, better for global health, and better, obviously, for animals. So how do we make that happen? Science and engineering. I spend quite a bit of time in the book making the case that science and engineering can get us there, but it's not self-actualizing. It's not self-executing. That's what I was looking for. We really do need to put in the work. So I interviewed 30 plant-based meat scientists, 30 cultivated meat scientists. I talk about the distillation of those conversations and those emails, as well as quoting quite a few of them directly. And where I end up is absolutely convinced that science can do it, and also convinced that it's a lot easier than many other things that science has already done. Nuclear fission, putting a human being on the moon, creating cheap solar, cheap wind, making better EV batteries and bringing down the costs, all of those appear to be way harder than plant-based and cultivated meat that competes on price and taste. But really the heart of my argument, the way that I think you get there, is you convince governments to help us build the scientific ecosystem. So the heart of my argument is this is a $2 trillion opportunity, and it offers governments that are concerned about food systems resilience, about food security, about food self-sufficiency. It offers them a way to shift in the direction of being able to feed their populations with much greater security. The foreword to the book is written by Caitlin Welsh, who worked at the Department of State and the National Security Council under Barack Obama, and then for almost all of Donald Trump's first term. Now she's Director of Global Food and Water Security at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. She was lead author on a report for CSIS that basically argued, didn't basically argue, it argued that the US government should prioritize alternative proteins alongside advanced chips for AI and the biopharmaceutical industry. And it's that argument, it's the economic argument, the food security argument, that has governments all over the world funding R&D and incentivizing private sector activity for both plant-based and cultivated meat research and development and scaling. So 7 years ago, no governments were funding in this space. Now it's India, Israel, Brazil, Japan, Korea, Singapore, China, governments across Europe, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, and more who are funding in this space, and they're doing it for economic competitiveness reasons and food security reasons. There have been some obituaries recently of both plant-based meat and cultivated meat. The plant-based meat obituaries basically say 10 years later, the products are not succeeding. They cost too much, they don't taste good enough, ergo, the endeavor has failed. On the cultivated meat side, they point out that venture capital is scarce and again say cultivated meat looks like it's not going to happen. This is really a failure of imagination. In chapter 8, I dive into the fact that this is basically how innovation happens. Everything from airplanes and cars to home computers to artificial intelligence to the smartphone that most of us have within reach, none of them came out fully formed. If you flash back to the beginning of the 20th century, in the first 10 years, 1900 to 1910, more than 500 car companies failed. And Woodrow Wilson, who was then president of Princeton University, said cars will never be more than a plaything for the idle rich. Henry Ford came along and innovated, brought prices down, made the cars more functional, and 25 years later, they were America's #1 industry. Flash forward 100 years to the turn of the 21st century, into the 21st century, and we've got internet commerce and the dot-com bubble. NASDAQ lost 80% of its value. More than half of internet commerce companies went out of business. Amazon dropped from $213 a share to less than $6, a more than 95% drop. And the sort of expert commentary was ruthless. Who would have thought somebody would want to buy pet supplies online? Pets.com, they scoffed. Similarly, Amazon, when is this Jeff Bezos guy ever going to turn a profit? Now we're 25 years later. Chewy, a pet supply company on the internet, is worth $13 billion. That's more than 30 times what Pets.com was ever worth. And Amazon is the 5th most valuable company in the world. This is just how innovation happens. There are fits and starts. It takes time. It takes effort. And in the book, I lay out what that's going to look like. I close with a reflection of what everybody who understands the imperative can do to help. I'm convinced that if we're not successful in making plant-based meat and cultivated meat that competes with industrial animal meat on taste and price, I'm convinced the science can work. I'm convinced it's a lot easier than many other things that we have been successful at. But again, it's not self-executing. If we don't succeed, it will be because we didn't bring sufficient will. So this book is my attempt to make the case and to push forward the global commitment to making it happen. I really hope that you will check it out. Thank you. Okay, anybody who knows me may have been sitting there thinking the entire video, wait a minute, what's Bruce doing in a suit? Well, I just got back from recording PBS NewsHour. I was in conversation with co-host Jeff Bennett about the book. They are going to be airing that on the NewsHour on launch day, which is Tuesday, which maybe, that's when I'm going to post this, so maybe when you're watching it. If you're in the US, check your local listings. Otherwise, you'll be able to check it out online. Thank you.